When entitlement meets reality, sparks fly. Literally, what started as a simple demand from a Karen for free access to my Tesla charger ended in the fiery downfall of her beloved Lexus right in front of the entire neighborhood. This is a story of arrogance, warnings ignored, and karma served in flames. It all began on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind of day when you expect peace, maybe a cup of coffee on the porch, and the simple hum of the neighborhood waking up. But peace never lasts long when you live under the constant watch of an IH, and when that HOA has a self-appointed queen, known by everyone as a Karen. She wasn't officially in charge, but if you asked her, she ran the entire neighborhood. Rules, gossip, drama, everything had her fingerprints on it. That morning, I had just finished charging my Tesla and was tidying up when Karen stormed down the sidewalk. Her heels clicked like warning shots, and her floral blouse swayed as if announcing her arrival before her mouth even opened. I already knew what was coming. When Karen walks with that much fire, she's not coming to say hello. Without so much as a greeting, she pointed her finger at me and demanded, "I need access to your Tesla charger, and I need it today. HOA members should all be allowed to use it. You can't just keep it for yourself." For a second, I just blinked at her, trying to decide whether she was joking, but the sharpness in her eyes made it clear. She was dead serious. My Tesla charger wasn't some community property. I had paid for the installation, dealt with the permits, and continued paying the electric bills out of my own pocket. It was mine, not some shared HOA amenity. "Hey, Karen," I said carefully, keeping my voice calm. "This charger belongs to me. I bought it, I installed it, and I pay for the electricity. It's not something the HOA owns. You can't just demand to use it." That answer, of course, was like throwing gasoline on a fire. She gasped dramatically, clutched her pearls as though I had insulted her entire family, and then launched into a rant about a community responsibility and a sharing resources. In her mind, anything inside the neighborhood belonged to her if she wanted it. The more I refused, the louder she got. Neighbors started peeking out from behind curtains, some even stepping onto their lawns, trying not to laugh as Karen's voice echoed through the street. She accused me of being selfish, of not being a team player, and even threatened to bring this up at the next HOA meeting. It was pure theater. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. I calmly explained again that the charger was my private property, just like my car and my driveway. But Karen didn't want logic. She wanted control. To her, saying no wasn't an option. She paced, pointed, and waved her arms, her entitlement on full display. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about charging a car. It was about her ego, her need to dominate, her belief that the neighborhood revolved around her demands. She wasn't asking for access, she was demanding obedience. And when people like Karen don't get their way, you know the story is far from over. If there's one thing you should know about Karen, it's that she never takes a no for an answer. For her, disagreement isn't just a difference of opinion, it's a personal insult. The moment I calmly explained that she couldn't use my Tesla charger, her whole posture shifted. She stiffened like a soldier ready for battle, her eyes narrowing as if I had just declared war against her. Do you mean to tell me," she snapped, voice rising several decibels higher, "that you think you can just hoard this for yourself? This is a community. You're part of the HOA, which means you're obligated to share. I could feel the tension tightening like a rope between us." A few neighbors had already stepped outside, pretending to check their mailboxes or water their lawns, but really, everyone's attention was glued to the showdown. One man even leaned against his fence, grinning like he'd just gotten front row seats to the best drama of the week. I took a breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Karen," I said evenly, "this isn't HOA property. It's like my car. I bought it, I maintain it, and I pay for the power it uses. It's mine. You can't just take it because you want it." That only fueled her anger. Her voice cracked with fury as she threw her hands into the air. "Selfish. Absolutely selfish. People like you ruin neighborhoods. If everyone behaved like you, no one would ever help each other." It wasn't lost on me that Karen's idea of helping each other always meant other people helping her. She wasn't exactly known for generosity. In fact, she was infamous for borrowing things and never returning them, or worse, demanding favors and acting like she was owed them. Her accusations grew more theatrical with every word. She said I was a bad neighbor, that I was hoarding resources, and even tossed in that I was probably breaking HOA rules. The irony was almost funny. There was no rule about EV chargers in the bylaws, but in her mind, rules didn't matter as long as she could twist them to fit her narrative. The crowd around us thickened. Phones came out. People started recording, whispering, chuckling under their breath, and the more attention Karen got, the louder she became. She wagged her finger right in my face, her floral blouse fluttering dramatically in the morning breeze. At one point, she shouted, "If you don't let me use it, I'll make sure the HOA fines you." That line sent a ripple of laughter through the crowd. Everyone knew the HOA had no grounds for such nonsense, but Karen's threats were always her favorite weapon. I stayed rooted, refusing to back down. My calmness seemed to infuriate her more than anything else. While she wanted me flustered and defensive, I refused to give her the satisfaction, and that only made her unravel further. By now, her voice had become a shrill echo across the block. Children peeked out from behind fences and neighbors openly chuckled. It was no longer a private argument. It was a neighborhood spectacle. And Karen, whether she realized it or not, had turned herself into the star of the show. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the climax yet. Karen wasn't the type to storm off defeated. No, when she felt her control slipping, she always escalated. And as her eyes darted toward her Lexus parked nearby, I had the uneasy feeling she was about to prove me right. By this point, the argument had reached a fever pitch. Karen's face was flushed, her voice hoarse from yelling, and the neighborhood audience was thoroughly entertained. But if there's one thing Karen couldn't stand more than being told a no, it was being laughed at. And, unfortunately for her, the chuckles from the crowd had grown loud enough to sting. That's when her eyes landed on her shiny Lexus parked a few feet away. It was spotless, polished to a mirror finish with chrome accents that sparkled in the sunlight. To Karen, her Lexus wasn't just a car. It was her crown jewel, her rolling symbol of status. She drove it like royalty parades in a carriage, making sure everyone noticed. And now, in her anger, it was about to become her weapon. With a huff, she stormed toward it, heels clacking like gunfire against the pavement. "If you won't let me," she shouted over her shoulder, "then I'll show you that I don't need your permission," the crowd murmured. Phones lifting higher. I felt my stomach tighten, knowing this wasn't going to end well. Karen yanked open the door, slid into the driver's seat, and revved the Lexus dramatically as if the roar of the engine itself would silence her critics. Then, with reckless determination, she jerked the wheel and rolled the car closer to the Tesla charging station. A gasp swept through the crowd. Everyone knew what she was about to attempt, and every neighbor standing there knew it was a disaster waiting to happen. The Tesla supercharger was clearly marked, clearly designed for Tesla vehicles only. The plug was shaped specifically for Tesla ports. But Karen, blinded by pride, arrogance, and the need to prove herself right, didn't care. I stepped forward, holding up my hand. Karen, stop. That charger isn't made for your car. You're going to damage it." But she cut me off with a sneer. You just don't want me to succeed. You think you're smarter than me, but I know what I'm doing. This is just electricity. It's all the same." That line drew a few snorts of laughter from the crowd. One neighbor whispered, "Oh, this is going to be good," while another muttered, "I'm getting this all on video." Karen leapt out of the Lexus, grabbed the thick Tesla charging cable, and marched toward her car's gas flap as though she'd done it 1,000 times. The cable was clearly too big. The port wasn't even remotely compatible, but she forced it, shoving and twisting with all her might. Her face reddened with effort, determination etched into every line. The scene had transformed from a neighborhood squabble into a full-blown spectacle. Children pointed, neighbors whispered, phones flashed as they recorded history in the making. And I stood frozen, torn between trying to stop her and letting her arrogance write its own ending. Finally, with a grunt of victory, she managed to wedge the Tesla connector awkwardly against her Lexus port. She looked up triumphantly, smirking as though she'd just won the argument. "See?" she shouted. "It works just fine." The crowd collectively held its breath. Everyone knew it wasn't fine. It wasn't safe. And in that tense silence, I realized we were all standing on the edge of chaos. The spotlight was now on Karen's Lexus, and what happened next would turn a petty squabble into a story the entire neighborhood would remember forever. The moment Karen forced the Tesla plug into her Lexus, the entire neighborhood seemed to freeze in suspense. People stood still, phones raised high, waiting to see what would happen. You could practically feel the tension in the air, like the silence before a thunderstorm. Karen stood proudly, hands on her hips, convinced she had approved me wrong. "See?" she shouted, her voice echoing down the street. "I told you it would work. It's just a charger. Electricity is electricity." I tried again, keeping my voice level, though my heart was pounding. "Karen, stop this before you damage something. That's not how it works. It's not compatible. You're risking." But before I could finish, the first spark shot out from the side of the Lexus charging port a second. It was small at first, just a faint crackle and a pop, but enough to send the crowd into a wave of gasps. Karen's triumphant smile faltered. She glanced back at her car, trying to play it off like nothing was wrong. And then it escalated. A second spark flared brighter, followed by a puff of smoke curling out from under the hood. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Oh my God, it's smoking!" Another yelled, "Back up, back up." Neighbors instinctively stepped back, pulling their kids behind them, though none of them stopped recording. The scene had gone from comedy to catastrophe in seconds. Karen, still unwilling to admit defeat, fumbled with the charging cable. She tugged at it, trying to yank it free, but the connector was jammed awkwardly into the Lexus port. "It's stuck!" she shrieked, her voice now panicked. I rushed forward a few steps, ready to pull her away. But then came the moment no one will ever forget. A loud pop echoed, followed by a burst of flames licking out from under the Lexus hood. The fire spread fast, glowing orange against the shiny paint, crackling like dry wood in a fireplace. The smell of burning plastic filled the air. "A call 911, someone screamed. Another yelled, "Oh, the car's on fire." Children started crying, and the crowd surged further back as the smoke thickened. Karen stumbled away from the Lexus, coughing, her bravado gone. Her face twisted between disbelief and fear, yet even then she muttered, This can't be happening. It's your fault." I shook my head, keeping my distance from the growing flames. No, Karen, I warned you." This is what happens when you don't listen. Within moments, the entire front of the Lexus was engulfed. Fire roared, black smoke spiraled into the sky, and the neighborhood descended into chaos. Some neighbors shouted directions, others shouted at Karen, while a few couldn't help laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Phones stayed up, capturing every second of her downfall. The once polished Lexus, the pride of Karen's driveway, was now a fiery wreck, spitting sparks and hissing like a wild animal. And in that moment, everyone watching realized the same thing. This wasn't just a small mistake. This was arrogance turned into a full-blown disaster, a literal fire fueled by entitlement. As sirens wailed faintly in the distance, signaling that help was on the way, one thing was certain: the neighborhood would never look at Karen the same again. The flames had transformed the once pristine Lexus into a blazing spectacle. Black smoke towered above the rooftops, the heat radiating so strongly that even from several feet away, you could feel it on your skin. Neighbors who had first come out to watch the drama now backed into the safety of their driveways, their phones still raised to capture every second. Some shouted warnings, others muttered in disbelief, and though they'd never admit it, were clearly enjoying the show. That was when the first police car arrived. Sirens cut through the chaos, and the red and blue lights painted the street in flashing urgency. An officer stepped out, tall and composed, his face carved into seriousness. His presence alone shifted the mood. Suddenly, this wasn't just neighborhood gossip anymore. It was official. "Everyone back," the officer barked, motioning with his arms. "Clear the area. Keep your distance from the fire." The crowd shuffled backward, though not a single phone lowered. In fact, more cameras seemed to come out, as though people knew this story was about to get even juicier. Karen, however, wasn't ready to accept defeat. Even with her Lexus turning into a bonfire, she charged toward the officer, pointing at me with trembling hands. "Arrest him? Oh." She screeched, her voice raw. "This is all his fault. He wouldn't let me use his charger. He set me up." The officer turned to her, expression unreadable, then glanced at me. I raised my hands in a calm gesture. I told her she couldn't use my Tesla charger. It's not compatible with her Lexus. She forced it anyway, and, well, this happened. Karen gasped, clutching her chest like I'd just betrayed her deepest secret. Lies! All lies! He was hoarding electricity. He knew I needed it, and he tricked me into destroying my car. The officer's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he kept his tone steady. Ma'am, are you saying you attempted to charge a Lexus with a Tesla Charger against his warning? Her face twisted, caught between pride and panic. For a split second, the crowd fell silent, waiting for her answer. Finally, she snapped, I had the right to. It's community property. He should have shared. The officer sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose as if he'd dealt with 100 Karens before. Mom, Tesla Chargers are not community property. They're private installations. And from what I can see, and from what about 50 witnesses have recorded, this was your decision. The crowd erupted in murmurs and laughter. Several people shouted, "It's true!" And hey, we've got it on video. The officer's radio crackled as he called in the fire department, his calmness a sharp contrast to Karen's spiraling hysteria. Still, she wouldn't quit. Even as the flames roared behind her, she kept yelling, her voice shrill. You don't understand. He's been targeting me. This is harassment. I'll sue." But the officer wasn't buying it. He stepped forward, placing himself firmly between us. "Enough, ma'am. You need to calm down. Right now, the priority is safety. Step aside." For the first time that morning, Karen hesitated. Her Lexus was gone, swallowed in fire, her authority shredded before the entire neighborhood, and now even the police weren't on her side. The audience, neighbors she once bossed around, were openly smirking, whispering, and recording every second of her humiliation. And though the fire raged louder, the real heat was on Karen. Her empire of entitlement was collapsing in real time, and no HOA rule could save her. By the time the fire trucks arrived, Karen's Lexus was nothing more than a glowing shell. The once pristine vehicle, the pride of her driveway, the status symbol she flaunted at every HOA meeting, was now engulfed in charred metal and smoldering plastic. The firefighters worked quickly, dousing the flames with powerful sprays of water and foam, but the damage was irreversible. The neighborhood watched in a stunned silence, broken only by the occasional cough from the lingering smoke and the hiss of water meeting fire. Everyone had their phones out, some live streaming, others whispering commentary as though narrating a sports game. This wasn't just a car fire anymore. It was the dramatic finale to Karen's long history of entitlement, and nobody wanted to miss a second of it. Karen herself stood frozen, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. It was as if her brain couldn't process the reality before her. Her Lexus, her crown jewel, her pride, gone in under 15 minutes. She stammered, pointing weakly at me. This is his fault. He should have helped me. He should have stopped this." The police officer who had arrived earlier shook his head, firm but calm. "Mom, several witnesses warned you. He warned you. You chose to plug your car into something it wasn't designed for. This is not his responsibility," the crowd murmured in agreement. A few people even chuckled outright, their laughter no longer held back. For years, Karen had used her position in that JHOA to control, to bully, and to lecture her neighbors. But now, the tables had turned. Instead of intimidating, she looked like the fool at the center of her own circus. One neighbor shouted, "Guess that Lexus isn't fireproof." Another added, "Should have read the manual, Karen." The laughter rippled, and for once, Karen had no sharp retort. She looked around desperately, searching for anyone to take her side. But all she found were cameras recording her downfall. The firefighters finished their work, leaving the Lexus a charred husk. Smoke still curled into the air, carrying with it the smell of burnt rubber and melted plastic. The officer scribbled notes, speaking into his radio, while Karen muttered under her breath, her pride collapsing as fast as her car had. I stood quietly, arms crossed, saying nothing. I didn't need to. The scene spoke louder than I ever could. Everyone had seen the warnings, the arrogance, the meltdown, and finally, the fiery consequences. Justice hadn't needed a courtroom or HOA fines. It had arrived in the form of a self-inflicted disaster. And in that moment, the neighborhood shifted. Karen, once feared for her sharp tongue and constant complaints, had lost her power. No one could take her seriously anymore. Not after this. She wasn't the queen of the HOA. She was the woman who fried her own Lexus because she couldn't take a no for an answer. As the crowd dispersed, people whispered, she got what she deserved, and that's karma, right there. Even those who had once tolerated her antics now looked at her with pity, or worse, amusement. And me, I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction. What I felt was relief. Because for once, the neighborhood bully had written her own ending, and the flames that consumed her Lexus had also burned away the illusion of her control. Justice, it turned out, didn't always come from rules or meetings. Sometimes justice was as simple and as spectacular as watching arrogance go up in smoke